Chapter 20. Bubba turned to Makenna as the EMTs carried Felicity out. Though she'd stated she wasn't injured and just wanted to return to Kelsey's to rest, the paramedics had insisted she get her neck looked at. Evidently, Iris had pressed hard enough to draw blood at least once, and they wanted to be sure she hadn't damaged anything underneath the skin. "Reckon we should have that talk now?" he asked as he took Makenna's hand and pulled her to him. She smiled and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I suppose we should." Man, how he wanted to kiss her. But he needed to tell her what was on his heart first. "Makenna, after the first murders, I felt such guilt that I didn't think I'd ever open my heart to anyone again. But there is something about you that makes me feel complete, whole. My life isn't here any longer, and I know that yours is. But Fire Beach isn't that far. We could talk during the week and trade weekends." She shook her head and placed a finger on his lips. "I don't want just weekends, Bubba. I worked hard to get where I'm at, but I realized last night that my job, my title, means nothing if I don't have someone to share it with." Bubba wasn't sure what she was saying. Was she telling him it would never work? Or was she saying that she would consider leaving Woodville? "Makenna, it's been a long time since I had to decode woman speak. Can you just tell me what you mean?" Makenna laughed and pulled his face down to hers. She placed her lips on his, and even though he still had questions, his arms wrapped around her waist. The kiss was everything he had imagined it would be, and while he had kissed women in the past, those kisses had never felt like this one. This one shook him to the core. "What I'm saying," Makenna said as she pulled back, "is that this town holds a lot of memories for me. Some are good, but a lot of them I'd rather forget. Now, it might take a while, and I would certainly like to check the place out before I decide completely, but I don't think I would be opposed to transferring to a new police department." Relief and elation flooded Bubba's body. "Like Fire Beach?" "Like Fire Beach," she said with a smile. "Or anywhere close to it." Yes! He picked her up and spun her around, before setting her back down and finding her lips once again. Makenna shivered as Bubba kissed her again. She wasn't sure if it was from the blast the night before, or the heat racing through her from his kiss, but she knew that as much as she wanted to stay right here in his arms, she needed rest. "You're still shivering, Makenna." Bubba's eyes were full of concern as he pulled back this time. "Are you okay?" "Honestly, I think it's just my body realizing it's all finally over. What do you say we go tell your parents the killer is behind bars, and then catch up on the sleep we've been missing this last week?" "I can't think of anything I'd rather do," he said with a smile. As they walked out of Iris Bloom's office hand in hand, Makenna thought about all the things she still had to do. She needed to inform the families of the victims that the killer had been caught. She needed to make sure Iris Bloom was processed correctly, and she needed to look into a replacement. Tad seemed like the obvious choice, but would he want the position? It was definitely a lot of work, but he was young enough and still single, and she couldn't think of anyone else she'd rather pass the mantle off to. "Captain Drake, Matt, can I get a word?" Makenna sighed at the sound of Natasha's voice. She was definitely not up to dealing with the reporter. "What are you doing here, Natasha? How did you even know we were here?" Natasha rolled her eyes and shook her head. "You really don't know what a valuable asset you have, do you? Old Henry is almost always sitting outside your station, and he sees and hears a lot. I paid him $100 to come find me whenever you left. He wasn't sure where you'd gone, but he remembered the name Felicity, so I figured this was worth a shot." Old Henry. Makenna should have known. Though the man often had a bottle in hand, Makenna had seen the sharp focus the few times she'd seen him sober. Natasha must have as well, and use that to her advantage. "Is it true, then? Dr. Bloom is the killer?" "It certainly appears that way. Of course, we still have to question her, but she had a knife to Felicity's throat, and she didn't deny the accusation. There's still a long road ahead, but I think the people of Woodville are safe again." Natasha's eyes dropped to the ground and she cleared her throat. It would seem, then, that I owe you an apology, Matt. I'm sorry I threatened to print the first story. And for what it's worth, I'm glad to know it wasn't you." Makenna stared at the woman in front of her. Had Natasha Kingston actually apologized? By the shocked expression on Bubba's face, she could tell he was having a hard time processing it as well. Thank you, I think," he said. "You're welcome." And then suddenly her apologetic demeanor was gone, and her vicious, cutthroat side reappeared. "Don't think you're getting off so easy when it comes to your relationship, though. It's clear there's something going on between the two of you, and I think the people of Woodville could use a feel-good story. Don't you?" With that, she snapped a picture of the two of them, smiled, and clopped away. "What just happened?" Bubba asked, as if he had just received an unknown error message on a computer. "I think the world might have just ended," Makenna said with a laugh. It felt good to laugh, to finally relax, and to do it with Bubba.